Yeah. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello.
How you doing, Joe? You all right?
How you doing? How you doing?
Good. What I'm gonna let's do that down here. What's been happening?
What's been happening? What in general?
Yeah.
Um, Not a lot. I've been back in London 2 weeks. I spent most of my lockdown up north. I'm originally from Stockport, but I spent it with my dad in the countryside. I thought I was going to be up there for like 2 weeks, and it ended up being close to 3 months. I think everyone thought this lockdown was to be a couple of weeks worth, and yeah, it was. It ended up being a lot longer than I thought it was going to be.
So you're back in London for good, or?
Yeah. So I live in London. So I graduated drama school would be 2 years ago, and since then I've stayed in London, auditioning, basically working a bit.
So what is your sort of story? What's you've seen the Terminator 2 film where Linda Hamilton goes up to Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator. She gives him a beer and says, "What's your story?" So
Yeah.
what was your story that got you into wanting to be a comedian and an actor?
Yeah. So originally I've been acting since I was about 11, and I've been around that time as well. I was watching a lot of stand-ups. I had it in my head so straight that all I wanted to do is stand-up comedy, and went through the sort of local theatre, and then did some stuff at Royal Exchange in Manchester as well. And then I had this grandiose idea that I was going to go to university and then afterwards go to drama school, which, if you know what drama school is like, is the most insane idea that you can possibly have, because that's like going to uni and then going to uni straight after again. So it doesn't really make any sense to do that. So I sort of left college. I'd acted a bit at this point, but not a lot, and went to Newcastle University. Spent 3 months there doing philosophy, and then had this big epiphany that I shouldn't be doing this, and I should be trying for drama school. So I moved back to Manchester, and then spent the next year, and then the year after that, you do it in sort of rounds auditioning. And I got in the second year into a place called Artshead in West London, and then came down for drama school. So I had 3 years in drama school, and then graduated a couple of years ago. Signed to an agent, and then I've done a few acting jobs since. And then alongside that, I've done stand-up comedy gigs. And the thing that sort of takes up a lot of my time other than acting is Selku's show, which is the online sketch comedy show I run with two of my mates, James Gladden and Callum Goulden. Yeah.
But how does it? So I've got two questions I want to ask.
Yeah.
Philosophy, all I just think of is philosophers saying wise quotes and that's it. And it's obviously more than that. And with acting, I've always been curious of acting because you get people like Tom Hardy, or you get like people in kidulthood or whatever, maybe not doing necessarily drama degrees. And then you get people that are just doing drama courses, and then they get into big Hollywood acting roles, and then you get people that are going to university and they're working in the bars watching them.
Yeah, so it's really varied. It's one of the only professions, I think, that, and I'm very interested in comedy acting, and that's sort of the main field I do. But acting in general, it's not like if you were a musician, and if you train to be a musician, and then at the end of it you're clearly a very excellent musician, you can't have no experience of music lessons and then suddenly be amazing at it. But with acting, a lot of the time that can happen, where someone can have either a raw talent or a raw ability. And drama school is an option, acting classes are an option, but quite often people having a level of ability basically just from their own personality and who they are as a person. And then that can be honed and that can be trained and to make sure you're doing the technical stuff right. But so a lot of the time, drama school is one option. It's not the only option, or acting lessons or whatever it might be.
How does it work with the, I mean, one thing, I mean, with acting, perhaps singing, how does it work with getting spotted? Because there's so many people that want to do it. And how, I mean, for people outside of it, you just think, oh, they just suddenly throw their shit at the wall and eventually some of it sticks and bish bosh, they get famous.
So, I mean, obviously, I can speak for me personally, but I know slightly other stories, I suppose. But for me, it took me to go to drama school, and then a lot of drama school in your third year is sort of the idea of it is to get you seen by agents and seen by casting directors and people within the industry. So in that sense, drama school does give you a real step up in terms of being seen by people in London in particular, which I would never have had the chance up north. Otherwise, it can be a bit of a slog, and it can be emailing people, sending letters to people, trying to get signed by agents. And then once you're signed by an agent, that's just a step in the process. The next thing you need to do is to start auditioning, which is then a more competitive field.
How do you go and like get an agent? You send them your CV, you're acting this and that, and say, listen here, Sonny Jim, my name is Joe, I am buff, you should put me on your records, and that's it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I sent out when I did it. Weird. You've been reading my emails again.
I'm sorry, man.
No, so you're always meant to have what's called a show reel, which is it's scenes from different things you might have done, like sort of condensed into a 2-minute fashion. And it means that they get a sense and a flavour of the type of actor and the type of roles that you might be able to play. So that's one thing that you can have. Also, there's a website called Spotlight, which is like LinkedIn for actors. So everyone has their acting CVs on there and headshots. That's what casting directors tend to use when they're looking for actors. But with getting signed to agents, a lot of it's just is emailing the right agent at the right time with the right thing. So if you've got something to offer, like you've got a play coming up, you might send an email out to 20, 30 agents inviting them, and you might get a response, because what that agent at one time is looking for a northern ginger actor, and they might come, they might think you're brilliant, and then just those two things, what they need and what you need, aligns at the same time. But a lot of the time, it's an incredibly, much like comedy, it's a incredibly oversaturated field. Like, it doesn't take much, it doesn't require much for someone to want to be a comedian or an actor. All it takes is you to start doing gigs or start writing your own stuff, or like it's not the sort of the entry requirements aren't exactly high, because anyone rightly should be able to do it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I find it interesting because comedy's got a lot of mix. You've got people from performers backgrounds coming, and sometimes you get street performers, circus performers, but a lot of comedians come in two categories. They're either sort of singers and actors getting into it, or they're people that aren't in performing arts, and then they go and end up in stand-up.
Yeah, so I know there's a lot of comedians that come into it. They sort of, like Ramesh Ranganathan was a maths teacher, was he? And I think John Bishop got into it quite late. These people that have probably been quite naturally funny their entire life, but for comedy is not in their head being seen as a viable option. And then you might get to a certain age where you go, well, isn't it worth just pursuing, because we see what happens? And it turns out, whether it's their life experience or who they are at that point in time, that works. But it does work. And then the other way is, I don't know, like I think Jack Whitehall started presenting when he was something like 16 or 17, and he did Big Brother's Big Mouth or Little Brother Big Mouth or whichever one it was. But he then started from a very early age, and his sort of experience has come from the last. He's not even that old now, and he must have been on TV 10 years at least.
Yeah. But his dad was also an agent, and
Yeah, I know. He got his step up because of his dad, I imagine. But I don't think you can argue he works hard. Whether he's not particularly my type of humour, but he obviously works well enough and hard enough to get an audience. I suppose that step up gives you something, but it's not everything, is it?
Yeah, no. I mean, you can't hate on him because he's done well. Good for him. Well done for him. But yeah, he's not mine either. Really, he's too mild for me. He's not interesting.
Yeah, he's quite prepared. Some of his. I always just feel like I know I'm being told a joke, from him.
It's just no, and he's an actor too. I just find it funny when people had. One thing I find, this is a thought from someone that's not really an actor or anything like that. I always thought that if someone does acting in comedy, it can be a bit of a distraction. Because if you don't decide which one you want to focus on, you put too many sort of, and you're not sort of.
The likewise with writing as well, because I tend to write quite a lot, or I write sketches and monologues and things like that, and it is. I'm not sure if it's a distraction, but I imagine it's a lot easier to go, if I'm just an actor, I'm just this one thing, and you throw all your effort behind it. But I find that if you improve one, then it can improve the other as well. I think the experience I've got now with acting and the training I've got with acting will make me a better comedian, and how I present myself, how I speak. I still have to deal. 3 years of drama school, and I still have to deal with reminding myself to slow down quite a lot, because that's my my sort of habit, is either if I get nervous or if I feel like I'm presenting something, then there's just something inside me that instantly speeds up. But with learning that, you know that of yourself, and if I came back on stage as a comedian, I'd be able to adapt it because of the acting training.
But yeah, I mean, yes, that is true to an extent. But I also feel, I mean, if I got an opportunity to act in anything, I wouldn't refuse it. But I'd say that I'm always a comedian. Then there's the focus there. But I would never sort of refuse an opportunity that's given to me. Because
I think if you're able to do comedy, and I think if you talk to a lot of actors about stand-up comedy, that frightens them more than anything that they've done on stage before. Because when you're on stage, it is you have the mask or the safety blanket of, these aren't your words. This is not a character that you came up with. You've not directed this yourself. If it's rubbish, there might be there's 6 or 7 elements why it might not be good. Whereas if in stand-up that this is you directing it, this is you writing it, this is you performing it. So it's not like you can walk off stage and potentially blame someone else. This is all your work, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. It's an interesting thing, because the reason I asked that question is I've come across a few people that are examples of that. And that's because I went to Philip Golier, and it was a clown school, and a few of them, like, they say that they're comedians and they're actors, but I've seen that they're not very motivated. And so that's where it sort of came to me, thinking, I had a thought there. If someone's too trying to say that they're in this and that, then it's a bit.
I think that's what helps with. I think I've slightly changed my tact in the last year or so, which is, if I'm acting, is comedy acting tends to be a lot of what I do. The stuff that I make with Sal Q Show and sometimes alone, that's comedy acting. Whereas I've now changed tack, because at first I was like, okay, I'll do stand up, and then I'll also do acting at the same time. And as you know, like stand-up is extremely demanding, takes so much of your time up. If you want to be gigging, you want to be gigging like a few times a week in some certain circumstances. So to do that on top of acting, which is, if you're doing like an audition a week, that's really good. But you're also having to prep for auditions. You may be looking for directors that you can contact. That's a full-time job in itself. So I do understand what you're saying if you like that diffused attention. But I think I've tried to be a bit more savvy with it, being like, okay, if I'm wanting to stay within comedy, stick more to comedy acting rather than straight stand-up.
Yes, yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah, I mean, I also may be wrong in that situation. It's just that I've seen examples of that. Like, you know, we get assumptions of things. We see as we get older, we watch certain people from a certain type of character or certain type of, or they say they do this and that, and then you sort of say, oh, your brain's a pattern picker.
Yeah.
And some of the people that I saw that said that they wanted to be acting comedians, they didn't really put any work in. They just sort of pissed about a lot. But yeah, bloody hell, that's a lovely little. Is that a vision board you got behind you?
Oh, that is no. I take photos as well, and there are actually some older photos that I've got from a couple of years ago, but I tend to match the colours up together. It's sort of when I was wanting to shoot stuff. So because obviously we film stuff ourselves for our sketches. You sort of need to get your head around a DSLR a little bit. So I got one a few years ago and just started taking pictures. Weirdly enough, there was I took a photo of a friend that I used to live with about a year ago, and he was just passed out on a sofa, and I put it on my Instagram, and one thing sort of led to another, and a friend of a friend got in contact with me. And originally I'd taken this photo as a joke, because this photo, it looks a little bit like sort of one of those Renaissance paintings where someone's like leant backwards and like almost fainted, something like that. And it's quite dramatic. But I'd taken this photo as a joke, and I got contacted for a friend of a friend, seeing if I'd wanted to display this picture in their gallery opening in Old Street Gallery. So I, after having virtually, I don't really have any experience with photography. I got chosen to do this night, and it was like a graduate photographers showcase. So along with all these very, very talented photographers, I'd managed to wing my way into this gallery where my picture was on the wall, and everyone was now treating me like an artist when yeah. So we really played up to it. We gave it a very pretentious title, and I had to write a bio, which was just bullshit. Really, it had nothing. It had no substance whatsoever in it.
And that's the. You must have quite a few stories, like being an actor and like from where you're from, and like what's been the most invigorating story you've had, like pursuing a career in the performing arts?
I think the last few years, especially after graduating, I did 2 TV jobs last year. One of which was for a show called Wild Bill that was on ITV, and I did one which is coming out in a couple of weeks' time called Cursed, which is on Netflix. And the second one of them, I think I only spent a few days on that show. I'm like a small part in one episode, and throughout the whole thing, it was just mind-boggling, the scale of it, the professionalism of these people. On some of the days on that set, there was 200, 300 people all, and I had to ride horses for it. I had to wear a wig. It's like proper fantasy based. I was blown away. I was pretty much so excited for every day I was filming that I didn't really sleep the night before. So I was turning up in this amazing set with wonderful actors, a director which I quite admire, and there's not other instances in my life where I felt like I was living what was like a dream to me, something I've wanted to do for my entire life. And even though, you know, it's a few days on this set doing a smallish part, but nothing beats that. That's why you sort of work towards it. And I think actors have this like, it's like, it was the right for it's self-flagellation where you do the whipping on your back. Like, yeah, it's some actors put themselves through so much, and we have to work alongside acting. It's very rare that an actor can just work from acting alone. And it's all film moments like that, moments where you get to live that dream. And it's not really about, and I don't want it to come across this way, it's not really about stroking my own ego, feeling like, oh, I was on a big set. And it wasn't like that. I was genuinely in awe the entire time I was there. And it was like, I was a little bit starstruck at times. But then I had to remember that I was there to do a job. And I have to, as much as it's amazing being on that set, you have to act at the end of the day as well and do what you were sort of getting paid to do.
Did you get the 5-star treatment? Did they give you foot massages? What's it called? A lot of shots behind the bar, McDonald's.
There's on film sets and on TV sets. There's a numbered system for the cast, and so like the main star will be number 1, and you know, my character was something like 128. But as long as you're considered principal cast, you do get some of that treatment, which you might get someone picking you up from your house, or a runner asking you what you want for breakfast. And I get a bit awkward by it, because you never, when in your life have you had anyone hand on your waiting foot like that for a day. So it's something to get used to. But then again, I imagine you can get used to it just so easily and just start snapping your fingers, asking where your 1 pump mocha latte is.
Yeah, I mean, with big name actors, I mean, how do they remain humble, getting all of that? How do they not be a dickhead if they keep getting treated like, and focus on the work? How do they, you know, if you're being treated like a king all the time, how do they remain grounded and motivated to do the work? That's the thing.
I think you can stay motivated because the treatment, all you're looking for is like that next exciting part, or like next project that you really want to work on. In terms of the treatment, like, I actually don't know, because it must get to people's heads so quickly. Like, I was blown away by it in the few days that I did on this job as a small part. And then by the 4th day, when I had to share a car with someone, I was like, what? I have to share this car with someone? I have to share a chauffeur-driven car? Oh my God, my agent's going to hear about this. And it's the bigger stars, obviously, they get, anytime the principal cast all gets the same treatment. You might get a place in the trailer, or your food served to you, or something like that. It feels too much, and it feels like, at the moment, it still makes me feel more uncomfortable than comfortable, when the whole idea is to make you feel as comfortable as possible, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's too much. I think because it's like with football. They say that with a lot of footballers, when they used to get the younger footballers to clean the boots of the older players.
Yeah,
and that might be something that might be needed, because it's better to have that. You have to really, really earn the good shit. And I think, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you know, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes at that level. There's all sorts of skullduggery. There's all sorts of rewards they get. But yeah, I mean, what it's funny though, like when you see stars or movie stars, they give a big clap if someone like Michael Jackson or some of these big millionaires that are actors and singers donate to charity. it's not really a big thing because he got loads of money. So like,
Yeah. It's the money aspect is then you're getting paid a lot of the time for a day's work, 2 days work, especially something like commercials where, and like I'm not berating actors at all, because acting is just for 99% of actors, acting is incredibly hard work, an incredible graft. At the end of it, 99% of actors you won't know the name of. There's only 1% of actors that get public and become famous like that. But some of the money that you can earn at the top end for a day's work, half an hour's work for a bit of voiceover is incredible. Yeah, it is really, really incredible. But then again, you might not work for 6 months after that.
It is something. I mean, they've got no problem with the Corona stuff. They're still living quite well in their little mansions, watching Netflix, doing.
Well, it was the Gal Gadot video, wasn't it? The Imagine. Yeah, all the celebrities getting together and singing Imagine All the People from their mansions. You just hope if you ever got to that level, and I don't really think that's going to ever happen, but that you still have some sense of self and sense of, I don't know, that this where you live and what you do is not it's not real. It's not real world stuff. I don't know how you compensate that, because everyone wants to enjoy their life, don't they? It doesn't like you have. I'm not saying if you earn good money, you still need to live in a tiny apartment. That's not necessarily what I'm saying, but I think there's a way in which you can conduct yourself. I think people just don't like any sense of celebrities when they're like, we're like you, we're just like you, but rich.
Yeah, it's funny. One thing I find funny, do you know Demi Lovato, that singer?
Yeah.
I mean, she's super famous and she's done a lot of good stuff like bullying and depression and all that. But the thing is, she had a big drug overdose a few years ago.
Right.
The thing is, she's not really made much of a change. She's still around the same sort of people and she's probably still taking it.
I think it's that level of stardom. And like you say, the treatment, imagine, I've been watching The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and how he was treated in every single room that he went in. It doesn't matter where he was. It was insane to see how people bent over backwards for him and treated him differently. Because imagine not knowing or not feeling like anyone is being truthful with you, because everyone wants to be your friend because you're Michael Jordan.
Yeah, it's because one thing that was funny is I watched an interview of Kobe Bryant, and he said that people called him Black Jesus.
It's insane. That level of, I think I've always been a bit suspect of that level of fandom of anyone in particular, because we're human and we're fallible and we make mistakes, and to idolize someone like that, like, I don't know, you're setting yourself up for that to be ruined at some point.
And one thing I think, people were making fun of Conor McGregor and saying that he's this and he's that. Maybe you don't like him as well, but this is my view of him. You don't know what he's going through, because he's reached a massive load of stardom in a few years, and like there must be a lot of nasty shit that he gets behind the scenes. Lots of, because he's so big, so famous, and he's got so much success, he must get a lot of shit.
Yeah, and it's a strange one, because I imagine it as a celebrity like that, you don't ask for that level of fame, do you? You just do your job. Like all Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant was excellent at their job, and excellent basketball players. With that, they were never necessarily asking for the stardom that come with it, or the fame, or the sort of response from the public every time they come. That's not just for being good at basketball. It's an odd thing to that sort of compiled onto that into your life.
it's yeah, it's. I mean, unless they got a firm base of people that are around them from the beginning to the end, that's the only way. But it's, I don't know. It'll be. God knows if someone did a documentary on what goes on really behind the scenes, rather than this sort of fake nice people that celebrities put on the top level. God, I bet it's harrowing. I bet you got some sort of Colombian cartel chatting to Beyonce, no less, and saying, "Listen, if you want to do your video, sweetheart, take a bit of hash, take a bit of sniff."
Yeah.
I'm not saying she is, but I'm saying you don't. I'm pretty sure there's so much sort of murky and really iffy things going on.
Yeah, because you have the presentation level, don't you? You have the what we like to see, what's given to us and presented to us in terms of albums and performances and that sort of thing. But I know even from just working with certain actors that their public perception and who people think they are is very, very different to who they are one-on-one. And that's been extremely telling, I suppose.
It must annoy the shit out of you though if you're a media clerk or if you're someone famous. You're just like walking in a park, or if you're just getting some food in a grocery store, this and that, and then you get known. You don't get any time to yourself. You get someone say, "Oh, could I get an autograph? Or could I get this?"
I suppose it is a risk of the what's the right word? It's occupational hazard, isn't it? Where it becomes part of it, and it's people think, well, if you're getting all those benefits, then you sort of lose your own humanity, and you lose that sense. Like even if seeing famous people, it's very rare that I get pictures with famous people now, because I've sort of, if I try and put myself in their shoes, even it's only for you, isn't it? It's only for you to go to show to someone else I had that, or to post it online or something. Maybe if you have a genuine interaction with someone, I always think that's worth a little bit more, a conversation with someone rather than a photo. I think you personally, if it's for you, you personally will remember that better than a photo. Because I've looked at photos I've had with people before, and I go, it means nothing other than the fact that it confirms that I actually met them.
Mm. They're not going to get in contact with you again. It's not.
Yeah. Who was that guy I had a photo with outside McDonald's?
It's but it. I mean, I don't know what to do with a lot of famous people sometimes. I've met a few of them, and I've always behaved weird or strange with them. Yeah.
You can't help. There's a little bit of nervousness. Like I suppose you want to be liked, don't you? That's the main thing. You want to feel like, oh, this is someone who's slightly different than the rest of them, and everyone has that same probably idea. It makes people do weird things to celebrities.
It's a bit. I mean, imagine I feel in terms of like celebrity, if you're a female like Beyonce or like someone like that, I mean, even the lower ends in comedy and what like acting, they must get all sorts of creepy shit going on. But then when you're at that sort of level, you got millions of weird men DMing you.
Yeah.
And if you're Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, or if you're Brad Pitt or Justin Timberlake, you must get all sorts of weird messages as well. Like you probably got Gary the cowboy, 70 years old, Joe Exotic, dropping you a few DMs here and there.
Yeah. And that's, I think, you're like tying yourself up in knots. Like you respond to a person in the wrong way, that's suddenly public, and that's your reputation, gone down the pan. All it takes is someone to screenshot a response after you've got angry and you've responded to someone who's been berating you.
Yeah.
And the public then doesn't see, maybe they don't see the past month of them having a go at you, but they see you kicking off in one message. And that's it for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'll say one thing though. I think with the coronavirus, some people are saying that there's going to be a second wave, and there's others saying that things are going to be okay in a while. Which side of the fence do you sit on?
I think there's going to be a second wave. It might not has come in the shape and form of the first one, like all of us are going to get locked down. I think like what we've just seen happen in Leicester, I think there might be localized outbreaks. And then what I'm surprised about is London seems to have gone down quite a lot and then just sort of stayed there. You would have thought after everyone sort of relaxed, people are sort of taking it upon themselves now, aren't they, to decide what those restrictions are. I think, what was it, like a couple of months ago where everyone took the government's word and we were just so willing to listen to it. And I think that's probably after the Cummins scandal that everyone feels like, well, if one person can do that, then we can probably take it into our own hands and decide what's best for us. So yeah, long story short, I do think it's going to be a second wave, but maybe not in the same style as it has been.
Do you think celebrities are going to change as a result? I mean, most of us are all going to change, but do you think the way celebrities are going to interact with their fans, or what do you think it's going to, like, acting sets and?
You want to think that, don't you? I think you want to think that this whole thing's had this profound change on us. I'm probably a little bit more skeptical about that because I think we've had our profound change and we've had our 3 months of remembering what's important and appreciating our family and saying, because there was, during that time, the last person that you wanted to see complain was a celebrity. But I think all those things is unfortunately going to recover, and it's probably going to go back to the very similar, if not the exact same, as what it was. Even though I would love it for to be different. I'd love there to be some sort of shift in how we see people and what we value. But you can feel it, can't you? You can feel that people are so bored of the current circumstances that they just want some return to more normality.
I couldn't get over the protests. I mean, I'm surprised that it hasn't really resulted in a massive spike in London already, when you got hundreds and thousands of people from the right and the BLM, doing their thing. Because surely people are touching each other and this and that. Surely that.
The protesting, I was in Manchester at the time, the protests, and it was a heavy debate in my head because I knew I was coming back to London, and two, I was with my mum at the time as well, and all the posts about the BLM march were saying socially distance, was going to be respectful, and I really, really wanted to believe that you're going to be able to socially distance in this Manchester protest. And for the sake of my mum, I decided not to go, and I decided it's a hard decision. As much as I stand with it, if I decided I couldn't go, and when I was looking at the images, there was nobody socially distancing. It was almost impossible. Where it is in Piccadilly Gardens in Manchester, you have people 2 foot in front of you. There was no chance you're going to get that 2 meter distance. The whole thing threw up this incredibly challenging dilemma, isn't it? Whether you, by supporting an anti-racism movement, you could be putting certain people at risk. Is like, you should never ever have to choose between those things, should you? The safety of your family and supporting what's right should be completely separate. It's incredibly unfortunate timing, really.
I'm surprised. I mean, maybe because the thing has been so poorly managed, maybe the spike's not been so good. Maybe most of us have already had it. You know what I mean? Without knowing.
Yeah, I think it definitely was here before it was reported on. That's what I believe, because flights were not stopped out of Wuhan, and the chances that it was spreading within our country before we sort of caught up to the number of cases that were being reported, like across Asia, then Europe, and then into the UK. I think my mum seems to think that she might have had it months ago anyway, but obviously we can't be sure because there's no tests about. I know I was really ill at the start of the year, so I don't know whether it's that confirmation bias where you go in, okay, I remember being ill. Yeah, maybe my cough was a bit dry and that, but it's hard actually to confirm how you were feeling, or are we just putting this notion that we've built up back onto what we've seen?
Yeah, who knows? I think things will. People are saying that things are going to get back to normal next year, and that's.
My thought, and I mean, stand-up is another example, and theatre in general is really, really at risk, and it's such a shame because I think it's such a somewhat underappreciated industry, theatre and live theatre, including stand-up comedy. And it would be sad that if it doesn't, because at the moment there's next to no support for theatre, and if you look at how much arts in general bring in revenue for the UK, I think there's a lot of. I think people see arts as the first thing that can possibly go. Unfortunately, it's not how I feel, but it's if anything, when shit hits the fan, what's the thing that we could do without straight away? And hopefully over lockdown, with what people have watched and how much people miss going out and stuff, that there's maybe a slight more appreciation of the arts in general. Because what were you doing in lockdown? You were watching TV most of it.
Did you see the Tiger King?
I did, yeah. I did. I think I watched it all. At some points, though, it felt... I don't know. There was so much happening at one point in certain episodes that I don't know if I lost some connection to it or some... I don't know. It felt like you were watching something you shouldn't for a while with some of these personalities that were in it. I just started feeling sorry. I don't think enough was made of the animals that were involved in it either.
Yeah.
I know they came back right at the end. They come back to it and say, I think Joe Exotic speaks about whether he mistreated was it orangutans or something, because he kept them in separate cages. And I think they sort of missed the trick, because even the cages that I know it's a rescue that the woman, I forgot her name, but the woman who kept sort of the rival.
Yeah.
All of it seemed wrong. To take any animal away from the habitat to live in a small box like that, I think maybe that's what I felt uncomfortable with throughout the whole series. Of like, it's sort of just the series accepted that these things happen in America, and then it was focused on these personalities.
I couldn't get over the fact that there's more tigers in exotic tigers in America than there is across the world.
I think that's the thing I was trying to get at. Like, I found that sad enough to not really empathize with anyone. I know everyone had these connections with these wild animals, but I was like, let's just leave them alone. It's just, we don't, to do what because it ended up being animal abuse, a lot of it. Even the people that were saying that they were really looking after the animals, it still felt wrong in so many senses.
They're all very cookie, and they're all like Doc Antle.
Yeah.
What was he doing? Getting the boob jobs or something, and then what's it called? Carol Baskin. I mean, it was quite moving, her and her husband, and she came across as a nice lady. And then Joe Exotic, like, marrying two men who were straight, and it's just that they wanted meth. So he said, right, if you let me have sex with you, you get meth. It's a bit like, I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah. And then obviously Louis Theroux met him in a documentary, didn't he? Way prior. And but yeah, I don't know. I think Last Dance was my series of choice over that lockdown period. I absolutely loved that.
What was the bit where they had Kobe in it? Because I've watched bits and pieces of it, but I've not seen all of it.
I think they interviewed him because I think Kobe's reign as like the number one came slightly after Michael Jordan's time at the Bulls after he finished in '96, or after his time at the Bulls was finished in '96. But I think they interviewed Kobe obviously before his death, and yeah, I think there was a section, but they didn't make too much of the fact they were interviewing Kobe Bryant, and Kobe Bryant's now dead. They just threw this interview in, and it worked really well.
He is, yeah. I'm a big fan of both of them. I like them a lot. But I mean, I don't know what to say about Kobe and his that incident in the hotel. I've not really looked into it.
Well, that's what I mean. Is that if you call yourself, if people start calling anyone Jesus in some sense, like that's a figure that's in people's eyes perfect, and then humans that live and do stuff now, we're all full of flaws. And I don't know what happened, but if he has done something wrong, then it sort of makes idolizing people like that really dangerous.
Yes, because then even if they do something wrong, you're still like Jonestown. Did you hear about Jonestown? Like weird Christian group in like South America, and he got them all to kill themselves. Yeah.
There's another Netflix, Wild Country or something like that, which is on Netflix, which about there's a meditation leader that brings about this seemingly peaceful group who want to live by themselves in wilderness of America, and they end up killing in the name of him, and it all gets very, very mad. I suppose these things seem to always be, oh no, this is not a cult. It's not a cult. It's just a collection of people, like-minded people. And then someone always ends up getting murdered.
I wonder when they're going to do it in self-help things then. Because Tony Robbins seems like a cult. And a lot of them seem like cults.
That's true.
I don't know. It's yeah, we live in a fucked up world, eh? Yeah. You know what? It's been we've gotten to some very deep topics there. We've spoken about a lot of things like behind the camera and mostly behind the camera, what may be going in people's minds. Yeah. And one of the things that I would like to ask you, drop me the message of your sketch show so I can promote it. And also, what I normally do at the end of the podcast is I want to get to know the person, and I want to. There's 2 questions that I normally ask that really reveal what the person's like. And one of those questions you find out what their ambitions are, what they want to do. And one of the questions is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Okay, so the first question is what ambitions do I have?
No, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Right, okay. The advice that I would give to my younger self is, as quick as possible, drop the ego. Drop the sense that you need to be the best, or you need to do, maybe that's the right word. You need to be the top actor, or you need to do the most challenging parts. The thing that I would tell myself is then just drop any sense of that, because the quicker you drop it and you accept yourself for who you are and the parts you're going to play, the more enjoyment you're going to get from the simplest of stuff, the smaller stuff. There was like a really, really defining moment in my training where in 3rd year, when you do your big public plays for the first time, I got cast as 2 quite smallish parts. And at the time I got the casting as I was on a plane heading to Krakow for my brother's stag do, right? And it was going to be either, amazing, I got this great part and I'll fly off and enjoy my weekend. And I got the casting, and I remember just feeling like so depleted, so down about the whole thing. And until I got into the rehearsals and I worked with this director who I still to this day think is a woman called Zoe Waterman, who I think is the best director I've worked with. And we created this world around the play. And suddenly these two small characters were like incredible, and they were amazing to me, and I loved them, and I loved performing them. And I think stage time over close to a 2-hour play, I probably only had 10 minutes, something like that, max. But the amount I enjoyed playing those characters just stays with me. And I never thought to myself with those, it was like half a page of monologue and then like another character that had a few lines. That really taught me that it doesn't have to be the biggest part for you personally to enjoy it most. But yeah, that's a roundabout way of saying just drop the sense of that you need to be the main character all the time, the number one.
And what would you say is a quote that you'd like to live by?
If you can make them laugh, you can make them listen. That's something that I've thought for a long time, because I think a very good example of this is someone like John Oliver, who combines comedy with journalism and sort of like pretty much educating people at times about quite complicated issues. I also like the idea of using comedy for a social good and being able to talk about stuff is a sort of like a vehicle of being talking about stuff which is quite difficult to just have conversations about.
What was that?
That is a family chat asking if we're doing a quiz this week, so I'm going to mute that.
And what would you say is the hardest? What would you say is the hardest thing about being in the performance industry that needs to change?
That needs to change. Well, there's a big push at the moment, which is getting a no. Because what happens, I'd say 70% of the auditions, maybe even more, I'll go to them and I won't hear anything back. So you won't hear anything back whatsoever. And all that the industry is asking for at the moment is just a no. You know what I mean? Just something that tells you that you are, that you can move on with your life. And then the other obvious thing is, which is still in development, is with the diversity within not just cast roles but crew roles within theatre. There's been like such a good step, or such major steps being made in the last few years, but I think there's a lot. It seems to like there's be a lot more to do. Like, you can think the progress is good, but when you look at how many people from minorities are still not working within this industry, I think what happens is a lot of noise is made about small successes, which is good, but there's still a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah, but also at the same time, rather than just doing a tick box, people that are good.
Yeah, that's something that I was quite interested in with female comedians that were going on things like Mock the Week and maybe not QI so much, but some of the big sort of panel shows in this country. And he was saying that a woman going on there and being the token woman is quite difficult, because what they seem to find is men will quite often either interrupt them or finish their jokes for them. And like, it then becomes difficult if you're the token woman to perform to maybe the ability that you know you can, when you're having things that undermine your performance constantly.
Yeah, it's true. And one last question is, where can people reach you, and like if they want to find out more about your work?
Yeah, so the main thing that obviously we're working towards, Selcouth Show, so at Selcouth Show, Selcouth spelled SELCOUTH show. We have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You find us on YouTube. We don't tend to use that too much. Me personally, I'm Joe Cook and you can find me at Joe Wook, so JoeWook, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you want, really.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll see you when things are all better.
Yeah. Nice talking to you, mate.
See ya.